Hey guys, tonight we step through time to the high plateau of Persia. The year is 330 BCE, and the dry air tastes of dust and smoke. The sun sets in a molten streak over the Zagros mountains, and ahead, rising from the plain like a dream carved into stone, is Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire. You hear the creak of leather straps and the clink of bronze armor as tens of thousands of soldiers march forward, their sandals grinding into the earth. Horses snort, wagons rattle, and banners snap in the wind. The ground trembles beneath this tide of men. Somewhere in the distance, jackals howl, as if they know what is coming. You stand among Alexander's troops, one more face in the ocean of soldiers staring at a city that has never truly fallen. Its walls gleam white in the fading light. Its staircases climb upward in impossible symmetry, and its palaces look more like heaven than stone. But here's the catch. You probably won't survive this. Before we get lost in the smoke and marble, make sure you subscribe for more stories like the burning of Persepolis, 330 BCE, Alexander's revenge. Drop your location and local time in the comments. We'll see who's awake with Alexander tonight. And when the flames die down, remember, history always burns brighter in the dark. Now the march quickens. You are there, trudging along, exhausted but electric with anticipation. For weeks you've crossed deserts and rivers, endured hunger and heat. Now you approach Persepolis, the city your commander swore would be the jewel of his conquest. This is no ordinary city. Persepolis is the ceremonial capital built by Darius the Great 2 centuries earlier, a project so vast it took decades to complete. Its terraces were carved into the mountain itself, and its stairways rise like frozen rivers of stone. Columns shoot skyward, crowned with bulls and lions, as if the builders meant to anchor heaven itself to the ground. Every surface is carved, scenes of tribute bearers bringing gifts from across the empire, from India's elephants to Babylon's textiles, from Egypt's gold to Scythia's horses. It is a city meant not for living but for dazzling, intimidating, reminding you that Persia is eternal. Except Persia isn't eternal. It has just been broken. You remember Granicus, where Macedonian cavalry slashed apart Persian satraps. You remember Issus, where Darius III fled his battlefield like a startled deer. You remember Gaugamela, the great showdown, where Darius again abandoned his men, leaving thousands dead on the plains. And now, with the Persian king still fleeing east, Alexander drives you toward the heart of Persia's pride. The air feels heavier as you climb toward the city gates. Local villagers, what's left of them, scatter before the army, leaving behind huts and fields. Some kneel, trying to offer what little food they have, hoping to survive. Others just run. You don't see Persian soldiers at the walls. The capital is already half abandoned, its garrison fled or too frightened to resist. Alexander, mounted on his horse Persepolis, surveys the scene. His cloak is dyed purple, a king's color stolen from the east, and his gaze is sharp as a drawn blade. He doesn't smile. He doesn't need to. The city is already his. You march through the Gate of All Nations, a massive portal, built by Xerxes. 2 colossal statues of bulls flank the entrance, their faces stern, their wings frozen mid-flight. The sound of sandals echoes under the high stone vault. For a moment you almost forget you're a conqueror. You feel like a tiny insect crawling into a temple of gods. Then the roar of soldiers around you reminds you this temple has fallen. Men cheer, raise their spears, slap each other on the back. Some shout insults at the carved Persians on the stairways, mocking the empire that once mocked them. Inside, your senses are assaulted by wealth. The floors glitter with polished stone. The air smells faintly of incense left behind in panic. Doors of cedar, inlaid with ivory, stand ajar. Cushions of embroidered fabric lie scattered, abandoned. Golden vessels too heavy for one man to carry glint in the flickering torchlight. This is not just wealth, it is obscene wealth. Centuries of tribute piled up in one place. And you, dusty and hungry from the march, are standing in it. Alexander raises his hand, and silence falls. He speaks in a voice that cuts through the air. Persepolis is the reward of victory, but he orders discipline for now. The soldiers murmur, half disappointed, half relieved. Loot will come, but the city is not yet to be torn apart like a carcass. Alexander, unlike many generals, knows the value of a grand show. He rides slowly through the palaces, flanked by guards, as if to make clear that he alone now owns this city. You catch sight of Persian nobles, trembling in fine robes. They bow deeply, offering keys, offering jewels, offering words you don't understand but recognize as submission. Behind them stand servants, slaves, and families, wide-eyed and silent. Alexander receives their offerings without dismounting. His expression is unreadable. Some say he is merciful. Some say he is cold. You are not sure which one you believe. Night falls, and torches blaze in the courtyards. The city echoes with the sound of soldiers setting up camp, hammering stakes, unrolling blankets. The locals huddle in their homes, unsure whether dawn will bring survival or slaughter. You lie awake staring at the carved ceiling above you, wondering how long stone can hold history. You wonder if Persepolis will outlast the Macedonians, or if this night is the beginning of its end. And here's the strange part. You're not alone in that thought. Alexander himself, pacing the halls, must be thinking the same. He has claimed Persepolis, but can he hold it? The empire still stretches east, where Darius rallies what remains. Behind Alexander, in Greece, in Macedonia, in Egypt, the lands he has conquered simmer with resentment. Persepolis, in its marble silence, seems to whisper, empires burn faster than they are built. But for now, the city stands unburned. Its walls glow in torchlight. Its relief seems to move in the shadows. And the soldiers around you, drunk on victory, cannot imagine this place reduced to ash. You drift into uneasy sleep, unaware that in a matter of weeks fire will do what no army could: erase Persepolis from the earth. Morning breaks over Persepolis with a brightness that almost blinds you. The stone terraces catch the first light and shimmer, as if the gods themselves polish them each dawn. You rise with aching feet, the sour taste of dried rations still on your tongue, and you watch Alexander's soldiers already moving like ants across the city. Today is the day the real treasure of Persepolis is unveiled. The treasury itself, hidden deep within the palaces of Darius and Xerxes. Word spreads quickly through the ranks. The Macedonians are about to loot one of the richest storehouses on earth. You hear men laugh, whisper, and brag about the gold they will touch, the silver they will drink from, the gems they will shove into their packs. Some dream of buying land back home, others of women and wine, and a few just want enough wealth to never swing a spear again. You don't dare say it aloud, but part of you worries what such riches will do to an army already swollen with arrogance. Alexander himself leads the procession toward the treasury. The building looks plain compared to the grand audience halls, but its size is monstrous. Its walls are thick, its doors banded with iron. Guards, Macedonian now, not Persian, stand aside as the king orders the doors flung open. You hear the grinding of hinges, the groan of timbers, and then the gasp of thousands, as the first sight strikes you. Gold. So much gold it almost hurts to look at, piled in bars, stacked in chests, hammered into bowls and plates, silver heaped in mountains, vessels carved with lions, bulls and winged creatures shimmer in the torchlight, rolls of embroidered cloth from Babylon, carpets from Media, ivory from India, all lie untouched as if waiting centuries for this moment. Some say the treasure of Persepolis equaled 120,000 talents of gold and silver, an amount so vast it would take tens of thousands of oxen just to move it. You stare at it and think, this isn't treasure, it's the weight of empires. The soldiers surge forward like a flood, but Alexander holds up his hand again. Discipline, order. He wants this wealth counted, weighed, catalogued. He is no common raider. He is a king who intends to use this treasure to fuel more conquest. You hear scribes scratching furiously on wax tablets, tallying heaps of bullion. You see slaves ordered to begin packing, bundling, loading carts. The air fills with the sound of chains, the grunt of oxen, the bark of officers. Still, even with order, the looting is a spectacle. You see hardened veterans staring wide-eyed, fingers twitching as if to test if the gold is real. You hear a man laugh hysterically, clutching a necklace of emeralds he surely won't be allowed to keep. Some soldiers slip coins into their boots, or wrap chains around their waists under tunics. No one dares stop them. It would take an army just to police the thieves among the victors. You wander deeper and see inscriptions on clay tablets stored on shelves. The records of the empire, lists of tribute, names of governors, inventories of livestock, workers, and pay. Knowledge worth almost as much as the treasure itself, but no one cares for clay when mountains of gold sit beside it. The soldiers knock tablets aside, shattering history underfoot. You can almost hear the scribes of old crying out as their careful work turns to dust. The looting stretches for days. Caravans of wealth begin to move out of the city. Escorted by Macedonian guards, Alexander intends to send this treasure west, back to Greece and Macedonia, to cement his rule and fund his ambitions. You realize the irony. The wealth gathered from countless conquered lands will now pay for the conquest of even more lands. It is empire devouring empire. At night, the soldiers drink from captured cups, reclining on Persian couches, wearing silken robes stolen from noble homes. The camp becomes a parody of luxury. Rough men draped in fabrics they don't understand, toasting in languages they barely speak, laughing until wine spills across gold-inlaid floors. The smell of roasted meat mingles with incense looted from temples. For a moment you wonder if you are still in the army at all, or if you've become some strange court of barbarians. You catch a glimpse of Alexander himself, seated high on a throne once belonging to Darius. The torchlight flickers across his face, half shadow, half glow. He wears Persian robes now, not the simple Macedonian cloak. His eyes scan the hall as if testing how it feels to rule from this seat. Some of his men murmur uneasily. Too much Persian softness, they whisper. Others cheer at last. Alexander is king, not just of Greece but of Asia. You cannot tell which side of history you stand on. In the streets, Persian citizens live in dread. You see them scurry through alleys, clutching children, whispering prayers. Some are enslaved outright, dragged into service to haul treasure or clean barracks. Others try to flatter their new masters, offering information, food, or even daughters. A few nobles throw themselves on Alexander's mercy, hoping to retain their estates. Most just endure in silence, watching their city's wealth stripped bare. And yet, Persepolis still stands. The palaces still rise. Their reliefs still gleam. Their stairways still wind upward. For all the treasure removed, the city itself remains intact, like a beautiful face robbed of its jewelry, but not yet scarred. You walk among the halls and wonder if this will last, if the Macedonians will preserve this city as a jewel of their empire, or if greed and vengeance will eventually consume it. The treasury, once the heartbeat of Persia, is now a gutted shell, but you cannot shake the sense that this is only the beginning. Alexander's army has fed on gold, but soon it will hunger for something else. Blood, fire, revenge. And when that moment comes, Persepolis will not just be looted, it will be erased. For now, though, you bed down in a palace that once belonged to kings, belly full of stolen food, eyes heavy with exhaustion. The torches flicker, the shadows crawl, and you wonder if you are dreaming when you think you hear the stone itself whispering, "Nothing built by pride survives forever." The days after the treasury is emptied bring a strange quiet to Persepolis, but not a peaceful one. You can sense it in the air, the nervous shifting of the Persian citizens, the swagger of the Macedonian guards who now strut through courtyards as if they were born to marble. The clash of cultures echoes everywhere. The Persians, those who remain, are caught in the tension between survival and dignity, while Alexander's men, drunk on victory and wealth, test how far they can push their new dominance. You step into the streets and the contrast is jarring. Once these avenues were swept, ordered, and filled with processions of tribute-bearers from every corner of the empire. Now broken chariots lie abandoned. Doors hang open where soldiers have kicked them in. The smell of smoke clings faintly in the air from cooking fires and from things set ablaze out of spite. Everywhere you see Persians glancing over their shoulders, unsure whether to bow, run, or disappear. The Macedonians and their allies treat the locals in ways as varied as their own temperaments. Some enforce order with iron fists, dragging men into labor, beating those who resist, forcing women into servitude. Others barter with them for food, cloth, or directions, feigning civility while quietly pocketing whatever else they can take. And then there are those who simply revel in cruelty, treating the once proud citizens of Persepolis as toys to be broken. Alexander tries to project authority, issuing commands that the citizens are not to be slaughtered wholesale, that the city is his now and must remain intact, at least outwardly. But his control is stretched thin, the army numbers in the tens of thousands, and even the strictest king cannot oversee every alley. For every soldier punished for disobedience, 5 more commit some hidden brutality. You see captured nobles paraded through the streets, their fine robes stripped away, chains cutting into wrists that once gestured commands over thousands. Some are dragged into banquets as trophies, made to pour wine for the men who destroyed their empire. Others are handed over to soldiers as slaves, their estates parceled out like hunting spoils. Even children are not exempt, taken as hostages to ensure compliance or sold quietly to traders who already sniff profit in the ruins. Yet not all Persians resist. Some adapt with chilling speed. Merchants appear in the marketplace again, this time offering silks, spices, and wine to Macedonian buyers instead of Persian nobles. Artisans carve likenesses of Alexander, eager to show loyalty to their new master. Priests whisper blessings in Greek, as clumsily as their tongues allow. You realize survival is an art as much as conquest is. In the royal compounds, Alexander entertains Persian envoys and surviving nobles who bend the knee. He listens, nods, and offers words of clemency when it suits him. Sometimes he grants them their lives and properties. Sometimes he takes everything. His unpredictability keeps them trembling. You witness one Persian satrap kneel, voice shaking as he offers his loyalty. Alexander raises him, praises his courage, and sends him away unharmed. Hours later, another noble does the same, only to be executed outside the gates. The message is clear. Loyalty may save you, or it may not. Alexander decides, and only Alexander. But even in this atmosphere of submission, you catch glimpses of quiet resistance. A Persian woman spits at a soldier and is beaten for it, yet the look in her eyes is unbroken. A boy scrawls something in Old Persian on a palace wall before he is chased away. It reads simply, "Darius lives." Servants whisper in corners about the king still fleeing to the east, about how one day he will return with an army and drive out these invaders. Their voices are hushed, but their hope is not entirely dead. Meanwhile, the Macedonians grow restless. The treasure has been carted away, but they crave more than gold. Some hunger for revenge against Persia, for generations of conflict, for the burning of Athens by Xerxes, for the wars that scarred their fathers and grandfathers. They mock the Persians openly, calling them weak, soft, undeserving of the empire they built. You hear crude songs sung at night around campfires, verses about tearing down palaces and taking Persian women as spoils. It is not discipline that guides them now, but arrogance. And Alexander, he straddles a dangerous line. On one hand, he punishes excessive cruelty to maintain control. On the other, he cannot resist the lure of spectacle. He stages executions of captured Persian commanders, not simply killing them, but making sure it is done where all can see. He parades himself in Persian robes, testing how it feels to adopt the symbols of the empire he has conquered, even as some of his own men whisper that he is becoming too Persian. You stand in the Apadana, the great audience hall, and watch the tension unfold. The reliefs on the staircases, rows of tribute-bearers carved with painstaking care, look down on this new order, as if in judgment. Those stone figures carry offerings of gold, ivory, and exotic animals to the King of Kings. But now, real Persians stand in chains below, forced to carry burdens for Macedonian overseers. The irony cuts sharp as a blade. One evening you find yourself in the quarter where Persian families huddle in silence. The mood is suffocating. The sound of Macedonian laughter drifts in from outside, while inside, mothers hush children with trembling hands, and men stare blankly into the darkness. Their city, their pride, their empire, all of it has shifted overnight into someone else's hands. You realize that this is what conquest feels like from the other side. Not the rush of victory, but the crushing of breath, the quiet erasure of dignity. Yet, Persepolis still lives. Its walls are strong. Its palaces stand tall. Its beauty remains undeniable. The Persians endure, and Alexander has not yet given the order that will turn stone into ash. But you can feel it building. The greed, the resentment, the thirst for revenge. They are all simmering under the surface. Every act of cruelty, every shout of laughter at a Persian's expense, every banquet where the wine flows too freely, is fuel being piled higher. One spark, will set it all ablaze. You lie awake that night on a Persian rug stolen from a noble's chamber. The stars outside are sharp as spear points, and the air smells of cedar and sweat. In the distance you hear the faint, sorrowful sound of a flute, a Persian melody, played by someone who remembers when this city was theirs. It drifts through the night like a ghost, haunting, fragile, impossible to silence, and you wonder how long before even that sound is lost to fire. The days blur together in Persepolis, each one gilded with strange contradictions. By daylight you see Macedonian soldiers swaggering across terraces once trodden by Persian kings. By night the torchlight casts shadows on reliefs carved 2 centuries earlier, as if the stones themselves are quietly mocking their new masters. And in the center of it all stands Alexander, young, ambitious, restless, testing how it feels to rule not just as a conqueror, but as a king of kings. When he first enters the royal palace, you are there. The great halls echo with the sound of iron-shod boots on polished stone. You walk beneath cedar ceilings supported by columns so tall you feel like a mouse creeping under trees. The scent of incense still lingers, faint but sharp, clinging to every carved surface. Light pours through high windows, glinting on walls once draped with silk, now bare, stripped in the looting frenzy. This is no ordinary building. It is the Apadana's equal, if not greater, the true heart of Persepolis's royal authority. Alexander does not stride. He moves slowly, deliberately, every step a performance. He pauses to study the carved reliefs of Persian nobles. Bowing before the king, he runs his hand across stone that has seen the weight of empire. His eyes narrow when he sees lions devouring bulls. That ancient Persian motif of domination, of cycles of power. You cannot help but think he is calculating how these images might be remade in his likeness. And then he does something bold. He sits on the throne of the Achaemenids, the seat where Darius the Great once surveyed the world's offerings. The soldiers gasp, some laughing, some muttering uneasily. Persian nobles, forced to attend, bow until their foreheads touch the floor, though you catch their trembling. Alexander sits upright, his youthful frame dwarfed by the massive seat, but his presence fills it nonetheless. For a moment you believe he was born for this chair. For a moment he looks as if he has always been the ruler of Persia. Not everyone is pleased. Some Macedonian officers exchange sharp whispers. They do not like seeing their king dressed in Persian robes, donning Persian ornaments, testing the weight of Persian crowns. He forgets he is Macedonian, one mutters. Another retorts. No, he remembers he is more than Macedonian. He is the ruler of Asia. You feel the tension ripple through the room like a bowstring pulled tight. Alexander seems to relish it. He knows the effect of spectacle. He invites Persian nobles to approach, allows them to prostrate themselves before him. His Greek companions shift uncomfortably. This kneeling custom reeks of servility to them, an insult to the freeborn spirit. Yet Alexander insists. In his mind he is weaving himself into the very fabric of Persian kingship, adopting not just the lands but the rituals of his new empire. You see his gaze linger on the walls, where murals once shimmered with bright pigments. Time has faded them, but enough remains to reveal scenes of royal hunts, of battles where Persians triumphed over enemies. Alexander's lip curls slightly, as if daring those painted figures to challenge him. He speaks softly, almost to himself. Now it is mine. His words echo in the hall, bouncing off stone that has heard kings for centuries. The Persians present do not speak, but their silence is louder than any shout. You can feel their humiliation pressed into the air like a weight. For them, this palace is not just a building, It is sacred space, the beating heart of their empire, the living symbol of Achaemenid power. And here sits a foreigner, young, brash, Greek, claiming it as casually as a child, taking a toy. You wonder how many prayers are being whispered under their breath at that very moment. Prayers that fire or gods might strike him down. Outside, the army grows ever more reckless. The palace is stripped of furniture, tapestries, even floor tiles pried loose to reveal veins of wealth. Macedonian soldiers lounge on carved couches, sprawl across terraces, and drink from goblets hammered centuries earlier by Persian craftsmen. The Persians, forced to serve watch silently, their faces masks of endurance. You realize the humiliation is not only in chains, but in seeing the sacred desecrated, their heritage turned into drunken entertainment. And Alexander, he notices. He is not blind to the resentment. Sometimes he punishes cruelty to remind the army he is master, not them. But more often, he uses these displays to cement his own image. He invites his generals to walk the halls with him, to see him seated on the throne, to hear him speak of plans for the East. He is rehearsing kingship, shaping himself not just as conqueror but as rightful heir. One afternoon, you watch him examine the royal archives. Clay tablets stacked in neat rows. His scholars explain their contents. Records of tribute, orders, and administration stretching across the empire. Alexander waves them aside. What he cares for is not the details of grain shipments, but the weight of authority they represent. He wants the title, the aura, the obedience, not the paperwork. You see scribes frantically copying some tablets into Greek, before soldiers grow bored and smash them underfoot. Centuries of knowledge vanish with each careless stomp. Yet there are moments, small, almost hidden, when Alexander's mask slips. Late at night, pacing the deserted halls, he runs his fingers over inscriptions carved in cuneiform, symbols he cannot read. You think you catch a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, as if he feels the enormity of what he has stepped into. To rule Greece was one thing, to topple Persia another, but to replace Persia, to sit on a throne that dwarfs even his ambition, that weight you can almost see bending his shoulders if only for an instant. The Persian servants whisper that Alexander walks the halls alone at night, speaking to the ghosts of kings. Some say he seeks Darius, asking why he fled, why he surrendered his empire so easily. Others say he hears voices in the stones, warnings that no man rules forever. You cannot know the truth, but you do know this. The palace is not just a seat. It is a crucible, testing whether Alexander is king or child. By day, however, he never falters. He holds banquets in the halls, inviting his generals, allies, even some Persians he deems useful. The long tables groan with food, roasted lamb, figs, pomegranates, honey, wine spilling freely. Musicians play lyres and flutes, dancers move in circles, and laughter fills the space where once solemn rituals were held. Alexander raises his cup, toasts not only to victory but to vengeance. For Greece, for Athens, for the burning they inflicted upon us long ago. His men cheer, slamming cups on the table. The Persians bow their heads lower, each toast another dagger in their pride. As you watch, you realize the palace is transforming. It is no longer Persepolis' crown jewel. It is Alexander's stage, his theatre of power, his rehearsal for kingship that stretches beyond Greece, beyond Persia, perhaps beyond anything the world has yet seen. And yet, you cannot shake the thought that stages are built to burn. That night, as you lie on the cold floor of a once sacred chamber, you dream of fire crawling up the cedar beams, of columns cracking, of reliefs melting into shadow. You wake with your heart pounding, the smell of smoke vivid in your nose. But when you blink, the palace is still intact, the night still silent. For now, the days that follow feel like one long preparation for indulgence. The tension that once hung over Persepolis softens, not because the Persians have grown less fearful, but because the Macedonians have grown more certain of their dominance. The soldiers have stripped the city of treasure, dragged away the proud, and toppled what they could not carry. Now comes the part they like best, the feasting. You hear it whispered first in the barracks. A banquet is coming. Not just any banquet, a celebration thrown within the royal halls themselves, a feast so grand it will rival anything the Persians ever staged. Alexander intends to drown his army in wine, music and spectacle. He says it is a reward. You suspect it is also a way to bind them closer, to remind them they share in his victories, his spoils, his dream. The preparations are staggering. Slaves and servants, Persian and Greek alike, are forced to haul amphorae of wine, baskets of figs, dates and pomegranates. Herds of goats and cattle are slaughtered, their blood staining the dust outside the palace. Cooks stoke fires until the air thickens with smoke and the scent of roasting meat. Spices, cinnamon, saffron, cloves, scatter through the air, so rich you almost taste them before the food even touches your lips. The sound of chopping, hammering and shouting fills every courtyard as day after day the preparations stretch on. Inside the palace, long tables are erected from planks resting on gilded stands. Cushions, rugs and silks stolen from Persian nobles are strewn across benches. Golden cups, silver platters and carved ivory utensils, once used by kings, are laid out for rough Macedonian hands. You watch grizzled soldiers grin as they run fingers across a plate, inlaid with lapis lazuli, marveling at how it will soon hold their greasy mutton. The musicians arrive, flute players, drummers, lyre strummers, even Persian singers pressed into service. Dancers rehearse, their ankles ringing with tiny bells. Jugglers and acrobats are coaxed from the local population, promised safety if they perform well, probably death if they do not. The palace begins to hum with anticipation. When the evening of the feast arrives, the halls blaze with light. Torches line the walls, their flames flickering against carved reliefs that once bore solemn tribute-bearers. Now those same carvings flicker in mockery, as if the stone Persians must witness the humiliation of their descendants. The laughter of soldiers bounces off marble columns, louder than the drums that begin to throb. You take your place among the crowd of thousands, the heat of bodies pressing around you. The smell is overwhelming. Wine, sweat, smoke, perfume, spices, meat. Macedonians sprawl on rugs, spilling wine onto priceless carpets. Persians serve them, eyes lowered, hands trembling. Some soldiers shout insults demanding more wine, more food, more music. Others slap their servers on the back, trying to appear generous masters. The power imbalance screams in every gesture. Alexander enters late, as always, the better to heighten anticipation. He is dressed magnificently, part Macedonian, part Persian, Greek tunic under Persian robes, a belt encrusted with jewels, a wreath of ivy on his head. He strides to the throne at the end of the hall, raises a golden cup, and the room erupts. To victory, he shouts. To the fall of Persia. To the rise of Greece. The roar nearly shakes the pillars. Wine flows like rivers. Amphora after amphora is drained. Soldiers grow red-faced, louder, careless. They sing bawdy songs, pound their fists on the tables, wrestle for scraps of roasted lamb. You hear plates crash, goblets shatter, laughter roar, even louder. One soldier tries to wear a Persian noble's turban as a joke. Another dances clumsily atop a table until it collapses, sending golden cups clattering across the floor. Alexander presides over it all, with a smile that seems half genuine, half calculated. He laughs at the jokes, applauds the dancers, claps along to the music. Yet his eyes remain sharp, watching, measuring. Even in drunken celebration, he never forgets that this army is his tool, his ladder, his empire. Still, as the night deepens, you sense the edge of control begin to slip. The soldiers are drunk beyond reason, their voices slurred, their movements sloppy. Some stagger into courtyards to vomit, then return for more. Others grab Persian women by the arms, dragging them into the shadows despite protests. A few collapse on cushions, snoring loudly, cups still clutched in their hands. The music grows wilder. Flutes shriek, drums thunder. Dancers whirl faster, their hair flying. The air thickens with smoke from torches and roasting fires. Shadows leap across the carved reliefs until it seems the stone figures themselves are dancing, mocking, jeering. Then comes the talk of vengeance. It starts as a drunken chant at one table, For Athens, for Greece. Soon another table joins, and another, until the whole hall vibrates with the cry, for Athens, for Greece. Burn it, burn it. You shiver because the words are half a joke, half a threat, and wholly dangerous. Alexander raises his cup again, his smile sharper now. He speaks of Xerxes, the Persian king who burned Athens nearly 150 years earlier. He reminds them of the temples destroyed, the city humbled. His words drip with fire. Should not Persia's pride feel the same flame? The soldiers roar approval, slamming their cups, splashing wine across the floor. The Persians serving at the tables bow lower, trembling, praying their conquerors only drunk. Yet you can see it in Alexander's eyes. This is not just drink speaking, the seed has been planted. The banquet, meant as celebration, has turned into a rally. Vengeance is no longer history. It is present, immediate, hot in the throat of every man in the hall. And so the night rages on. Soldiers stagger through the palace with torches raised high, still chanting. The laughter grows harsher, the songs more violent. Somewhere in the crowd, you hear a voice, clear, commanding and fateful, that pushes the spark closer to flame. But that belongs to the next part of the story. For now, you lie against a carved pillar, half dazed by wine and smoke, heart hammering as you watch your fellow soldiers chant for fire. You stare up at the cedar ceiling and imagine it blackened, collapsing. You taste ash in your throat, though the torches still burn clean, and you know you are standing on the edge of something catastrophic. The feast is still pounding in your ears when she appears. Thais, the Athenian courtesan. You may not know her name yet, but you feel the shift in the air the moment she enters the hall. She isn't clad in armor, doesn't carry a weapon, yet her presence cuts sharper than any sword. The soldiers notice her instantly, their drunken roars falling into murmurs. She moves with deliberate grace, her robe shimmering in the torchlight, her hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes lit with a mischievous fire. Thais is not just anyone. She has been the companion of Ptolemy, one of Alexander's most trusted generals, but her influence reaches beyond one man's tent. In a world where armies are held together by pride, hunger, and the thirst for glory, someone like Thais knows how to speak directly to the heart of men. She is witty, clever, and fearless, the kind of woman who can stand in a hall of drunken warriors and command silence. She raises a cup, smiling as though she is simply joining the merriment, but her words cut through the noise like a blade. Men of Greece, she begins, her voice carrying in the smoky air. You sit here drinking wine in the halls of your enemy. You eat from their plates, you laugh at their tables, but have you forgotten what they did to us? The soldiers lean forward. Some mutter agreement, others just grunt, but all are listening. They burned Athens, she says, her tone sharpening. Xerxes himself, with his army, set fire to our temples, to the house of our gods, to the city that gave birth to heroes. Do you sit here fat on their food and call this revenge, or will you show the Persians that Greece never forgets? The room stirs. Soldiers pound the tables, cups rattle. The chant begins again, louder now, more furious. For Athens, for Greece, burn it, burn it. Alexander watches her closely. His cheeks are flushed from wine, his eyes glittering with both drink and something darker. He is a man who thrives on performance. And here is a stage perfectly set. Thais sees it too, and she presses harder. Let me lead you, she cries, rising from her place, her cup spilling wine onto the floor. Let me take the torch into the halls of Xerxes, into the very palace where he once sat and laughed as Athens burned. Let me show the gods that Greece answers fire with fire. The roar is deafening. Men leap to their feet, shouting, clapping, stamping their feet. Alexander himself rises, swaying slightly, a crooked smile on his face. He holds up his cup, and the hall falls into a sudden hush. You can feel the moment stretch, taut as a bowstring. Shall Persepolis burn? He asks. His voice is soft, but it carries, rolling across the drunken hall like thunder. The answer crashes back. Yes! Burn it! Burn it! You can see the hesitation flicker across his face. This is no small decision. Persepolis is not just any city. It is the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenids, the jewel of their empire. To burn it is to strike at the very memory of Persia. To destroy it is to declare not just victory but obliteration. But then you see his expression harden. He raises his cup, drains it, and slams it down. "So be it," he says, "for Athens." The soldiers erupt in cheers. Thais is radiant, her eyes blazing as if she has summoned the fire already. She steps forward, holding her hand out for a torch. One of the soldiers, grinning wildly, thrusts it into her grasp. Its flame sputters, licking upward, hungry for fuel. You stumble to your feet, heart hammering. The drunken haze clings to your mind, but adrenaline sharpens it. You watch as Alexander takes a torch himself, the glow painting his face with flickering gold. Around you, hundreds of soldiers seize torches, the hall filling with smoke and firelight even before the first building is touched. There is laughter, wild and unrestrained. There are chants, stomping feet, the clash of cups thrown to the floor. The Persians, forced to serve, recoil in horror, their hands over their mouths, their eyes wide with dread. They know what is coming. Thais leads the way, striding from the hall with her torch raised high, her robe trailing like a banner of defiance. Alexander follows, his men surging behind him in a tidal wave of noise. You are swept along, stumbling, half willing, half terrified. The night outside is clear, the stars sharp above the terraces, but their light pales before the glow of hundreds of flames. You find yourself standing at the threshold of Xerxes' palace. The doors loom tall, carved with guardians that once protected kings. Thais pauses only for a moment, then hurls her torch inside. The dry cedar catches instantly, flames racing upward with a crackling roar. Soldiers cheer, and more torches fly into the halls. The fire leaps like a living thing, devouring curtains, tapestries, wooden beams. The air fills with the sound of cracking, the hiss of flames consuming silk and wool. Smoke coils upward, choking, acrid. You cough, your eyes stinging, but you cannot look away. Alexander himself steps forward and thrusts his torch into a pile of cushions, watching with a strange, almost detached expression as they flare into an inferno. For a heartbeat, you think you see regret flicker in his eyes, but then the soldiers around him shout louder, and he raises his arm as if to claim the fire as his victory. The palace is alive with flame now. Shadows dance across the stone walls, reliefs twisting and writhing, as if the carved Persians are trying to escape their fate. The smell is unbearable, burnt wood, melting resin, scorched fabric, the faint tang of bronze heating in the flames. The heat presses against your skin until it feels like your very flesh will ignite. Thais laughs, her voice ringing above the chaos. "For Athens," she shouts, her face glowing in the firelight. The soldiers take up the cry, their voices hoarse, their throats raw. You join in almost against your will, the chant vibrating in your bones. For Athens, for Greece. The flames climb higher, devouring the ceiling beams. Sparks burst into the night sky, carried upward by the hot wind. You glance back and see Persians watching from the shadows, their faces pale, their hands clutched to their chests. Some weep openly, others collapse to their knees, unable to believe what their eyes see. The city that symbolized their empire, the palace that embodied their gods and kings, is being erased in a single night of drunken vengeance. And yet, even as you watch, part of you feels the intoxication of it. The roar of the flames, the chants of your comrades, the vision of Alexander silhouetted against a burning palace. It all feels larger than life, like you are witnessing not just destruction, but a moment the world will never forget. You feel small, insignificant, swallowed by history itself, but another part of you trembles. Because you know what fire does. It does not stop once it is fed. It will spread. It will consume more than just palaces. And when the drunken joy fades, all that will remain is ash. The fire crackles louder, drowning out thought, drowning out hesitation. You wipe the sweat and smoke from your face and realize Persepolis is no longer a city. It is a pyre. The palace burns, and you are there, shoulder to shoulder with the mob. The night sky over Persepolis glows a furious orange, as though dawn has arrived far too soon. Summoned by human hands instead of the sun, flames climb up the cedar beams, leap across silk draperies, coil through painted chambers that once held royal banquets of an altogether different kind. It is no longer feasting that fills the air, but fire, the great devourer, hissing, cracking, exploding as timbers give way. And it all began with that drunken decision. Alexander, standing at the banquet, goaded by Thias and fueled by too many cups of wine, had lifted the torch himself. That one gesture turned a city into kindling. What might have been a moment of mockery, a gesture of revenge, has spiraled into an inferno with no master. The soldiers cheer as if they are gods themselves. For Athens, they bellow, their voices ragged. Some dance in the courtyards with torches, waving them like banners of fire. Others stagger drunkenly, singing songs so loud and tuneless, you wonder if they are trying to outshout the blaze. They kick down doors, fling torches into chambers, laugh as flames consume silken bedding and painted ceilings. The palace itself seems to scream with each groan of timber, each shatter of tile, each crash of a collapsing roof. The Persians who still linger, servants, citizens, nobles, caught in the wrong place, scatter like shadows before the blaze. Some beg on their knees, hands outstretched, faces wet with tears. Others run silently, clutching children to their chests. A few mad souls rush toward the flames, crying out to the gods, as though they might save what stone and memory cannot. None succeed. Fire is merciless, and mercy is absent from the eyes of the conquerors. You find yourself both participant and witness. You hold a torch, though your arm trembles as you clutch it. Around you men fling theirs with laughter, but you hesitate, watching the flames already raging. What use is your single torch against them? And yet, if you do not throw it, will you be marked as weak, disloyal, suspect? In the army of Alexander, hesitation itself can be fatal. You lower your eyes and cast it into the growing blaze, telling yourself the fire was already too large to stop. The heat surges outward, the wave that singes your hair and parches your lips. Smoke claws down your throat, bitter and sharp, forcing you to cough until your chest aches. You wipe tears from your eyes, but they are not tears of grief. They are tears of smoke. Through the haze you see Alexander himself silhouetted against the blaze. His face glows red. His eyes catch the firelight like molten gold. He raises his arms, and for an instant he looks less like a man and more like a god of destruction. But even gods can falter. When the roar of the soldiers dips for a moment, when the crackle of fire fills the silence, you see a flicker in his expression. Regret, doubt. Perhaps he sees what you see. But the flames leap, not just through one palace, but toward the whole city, toward the heart of Persia's glory, toward treasures and records and histories that will never be remade. Perhaps he realizes that vengeance, once lit, cannot be controlled. But then the soldiers shout again, and the flicker vanishes. He is once more the avenger, the torchbearer, the king who answers Xerxes' fire with fire. The drunkenness of the moment is contagious. Wine still sloshes in cups, torches still wave, voices still roar. Men stumble into halls already burning, dragging out Persian loot half-scorched by flame. A soldier reappears with a tapestry trailing fire, laughing until the fabric crumbles in his hands and scorches his flesh. He screams, then laughs again, as if pain itself has become part of the revel. Another soldier climbs a column to plant his torch higher, but the smoke overcomes him. He tumbles into the blaze, and the crowd howls, unable to tell whether it is horror or celebration. You stagger backward, trying to breathe, but the air is thick, poisoned by ash. Sparks land on your cloak, smouldering holes through the fabric. Your ears ring with the roar of collapsing roofs, the chorus of drunken chants, the crackling of cedar beams splitting under heat. The night sky is blotted out by smoke. Stars vanish, replaced by a red glow that seems to swallow heaven itself. And through it all, Thias dances like a prophetess. She moves among the soldiers, her robe shimmering with firelight, her laughter ringing above the chaos. She calls out to them, reminding them of Athens, of the temples burned, of the gods insulted. She holds her arms wide, as though conducting the inferno itself. Some call her mad, others divine. To you, she looks like both. The Persians who dare to look out from their hiding places see something altogether different. For them, this is not vengeance for Athens. It is annihilation of their own soul. You see an old man kneeling in the dust, beating his chest, his voice hoarse with prayer. Beside him, a woman wails, clutching a child who does not understand why the sky itself is burning. Their grief is swallowed by the noise of Macedonian revelry, but it pierces you nonetheless. The fire spreads, unrelenting. The painted walls blister and peel, their colors curling into blackness. The carved reliefs glow, crack and crumble. Lions, kings, gods, etched for eternity, dissolve into ash in an hour. The cedar beams, once the pride of the palace, collapse in showers of sparks. Columns topple, smashing statues into rubble. What took generations to build, the careful labor of artisans from across the empire, vanishes in a single night of drunken fury. And you stand there, trapped between awe and horror. Part of you thrills at the spectacle, the sheer immensity of it, the way the fire lights the faces of your comrades like masks of bronze. You tell yourself you are watching history, that this will be remembered as vengeance for Greece, as Alexander's most dramatic act, but another part of you recoils. You taste the bitterness of smoke, and you know this bitterness will linger long after the flames die. By the time the night wanes, Persepolis is no longer the city you entered. It is half a ruin, half a furnace. Smoke billows in every direction. Embers drift like red snowflakes, landing on rooftops, fields, even the clothing of men too drunk to notice. Somewhere in the distance, dogs howl, a sound thin and broken against the roar of fire. Alexander eventually withdraws, leading his generals away from the blaze. His soldiers collapse in drunken heaps, some on the very stones of the palace they have destroyed. Others lie sprawled across loot, snoring as smoke curls around them. Thais remains awake, watching the fire with a smile that never fades. You wonder if she knows she has etched her name into history, not as a queen or conqueror, but as the spark that lit the end of Persia's pride. As you stagger into the night, lungs raw, eyes burning, you realize the truth. The drunken decision has become destiny. Persepolis will never rise again. Its palaces will stand only as blackened skeletons, its beauty remembered only in fragments and ruins. The city has been transformed forever, not by siege, not by conquest, but by one night of revelry turned to ruin. You lie down on scorched earth, too exhausted to think further. The fire still crackles, the smoke still chokes, but sleep drags you under. And as you drift, you cannot shake one thought. You have just witnessed the moment when glory turned to ashes, when Alexander's revenge became history's eternal scar. The torches are no longer symbols of celebration. They are weapons now, carried like spears of fire into every dark corner of Persepolis. You wake from a shallow, smoke-choked sleep, and find the city changed forever. What was once the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid kings is now a blazing battlefield, where the enemy is not Persian soldiers, but the flames themselves. The first sight that greets you is the blackened husk of Xerxes' palace. Hours of fire have eaten through cedar beams and cypress rafters, until only jagged skeletons of stone and column stubs remain. The ground is littered with ash that still glows faintly, like embers of a dying sun. When you step on it, it crunches under your sandals, leaving footprints as if you were walking across bone. The air reeks of pitch, resin and charred fabric. Your throat feels raw, your eyes sting, and every breath tastes of bitterness. But the soldiers are not finished. The drunken frenzy still rages, though dawn is not far away. Men stagger through courtyards with torches blazing, throwing them through open doorways, hurling them onto rooftops, laughing as fire spreads to buildings that had so far escaped. You hear the sound of splintering doors, the crash of bronze vessels hitting stone, the shrill cries of Persian women dragged into the open. Some beg, some fight, but none can resist the flood of armed men who treat the city as a toy to be broken. Thais herself is at the center of it, torch in hand, urging the men onward. Her hair is wild, her robe smeared with soot, her voice hoarse from shouting, but her eyes shine with fire that matches the blaze. She has become a figure, half real, half myth, a living spark that refuses to die. When she throws a torch into the hall of 100 columns, the soldiers roar their approval, and soon the vast chamber is an inferno. Flames lick up the colossal pillars, crawl across painted ceilings, burst windows outward in fiery gusts. Alexander is harder to read. You see him walking among the blaze, torch lowered, his face shadowed by the glow. Sometimes he raises it high, thrusting it into some heap of cloth or wood, feeding the fire with his own hand. Other times he simply stares at the destruction, silent, as if his mind is already elsewhere. When soldiers cheer him, he smiles faintly, but the smile fades quickly. You can't help but wonder, does he regret, or does he simply calculate? The fire spreads beyond the palaces now. Workshops, storerooms, and smaller halls catch in the blaze. The sound is everywhere, cracking wood, collapsing roofs, the dull roar of air rushing into flames. Smoke billows skyward in thick black columns that blot out the stars, turn night into a strange twilight of orange and grey. The heat is unbearable, pressing against you like a living wall. Sweat pours down your face, your tunic clings to your skin, and still you stagger forward, unable to turn away. Persians pour into the streets, their terror raw and uncontained. Some flee into the countryside, their silhouettes flickering against the firelit horizon. Others clutch possessions, scrolls, jewelry, tiny statues, futile attempts to save fragments of their lives. Families huddle in alleys, watching their city die, powerless to stop it. You pass an old man kneeling on the ground, his forehead pressed into the dust, muttering prayers you cannot understand. Around him, the flames leap higher, mocking his faith. And yet the Macedonians celebrate. To them, this is justice, vengeance, triumph. They dance around the flames, drink from goblets stolen from the very halls now burning, shout songs so loud they drown even the roar of the fire. You see one man stagger into the smoke, emerging moments later with a half-charred throne he drags behind him like a prize. Another brandishes a melted crown, laughing as it drips gold onto his arm. Pain means nothing to them tonight. The destruction is not random. It has a rhythm, almost a choreography. Soldiers move in groups, setting fire to one hall after another. Some carry bundles of reeds dipped in oil, thrusting them against walls to speed the blaze. Others smash vessels of pitch across floors, watching the fire leap upward. It is not enough for them to see Persepolis burn. They want to see it obliterated, swallowed whole, erased so completely that no Persian will ever boast of its glory again. And yet, even in chaos, small details cut through. You see reliefs crumbling, faces of stone kings cracking and falling into ash. You see painted lions writhing as the flames peel their colors away. You see bronze hinges glowing red before sagging under their own heat. Every piece of artistry, every detail carved by hands centuries ago, vanishes in minutes. You realize you are not just destroying a city, you are erasing centuries of memory. At one point, you stumble into a courtyard where Persian women are being herded together, guarded by soldiers too drunk to be gentle. Their eyes are wide, their faces streaked with soot and tears. One clutches a baby to her chest, rocking it desperately as if motion alone might shield it from fire. You feel the urge to turn away, but you cannot. Their grief burns hotter than the flames. The fire does not stop for dawn. By the time the first light breaks over the mountains, Persepolis is a city of smoke. Columns stand like charred bones against the sky. Rooftops are gone, walls blacken. The sun rises, but its light is weak compared to the orange glow, still simmering from the ruins. You hear only two sounds now, the crackle of dying flames and the low moans of survivors. You look at Alexander. He stands on a terrace, gazing over the ruins. His hair is tangled with soot, his clothes smeared with ash, his expression unreadable. Around him, soldiers cheer half-heartedly, their energy fading after the night's frenzy. Some collapse onto the ground, snoring. Others stagger off in search of water to soothe scorched throats. Thais is there too, her torch finally extinguished, her eyes glittering with triumph. She looks satisfied, as though she has carved vengeance into the very stones. But you see something in Alexander's face that you cannot ignore. For a heartbeat, he looks stricken, haunted even. Perhaps he realizes what he has done, that he has not just avenged Athens, not just humbled Persia, but obliterated something that could never be replaced. Perhaps he knows this night will follow him forever, as surely as any victory. You stand in the ashes of Persepolis, your skin still warm from the fire, your lungs raw from smoke, and you understand, there is no going back. The torches lit in drunken joy have remade the world. The palaces are gone, the pride of Persia erased, and history itself has shifted. You will carry this smoke in your chest until the end of your days. And yet, even as the ruins smoulder, you sense the hunger of the army remains unsated. Fire may consume stone and wood, but greed and vengeance are never so easily burned away. The soldiers murmur about more cities, more victories, more conquests. Alexander's eyes, though shadowed with doubt, already seem to gaze eastward, beyond the smoke, beyond the ruins, toward the land still unconquered. Persepolis burns, but Alexander marches on. The smoke has barely cleared, and already the flames of Persepolis spread in ways you cannot quench. They spread in memory, in whispers, in the stunned silence of those who survived. By morning, the fire no longer belongs only to the torches of drunken soldiers. It belongs to the wind. Sparks leap from one building to another, carried through streets once swept clean for royal processions. Columns that had stood for centuries now crack and fall, showering the courtyards with stone shards and embers. The city groans like a wounded beast, still dying even after the soldiers have thrown down their torches. You wander through the ruins, your body aching from smoke and sleeplessness, your mind heavy with what you have witnessed. The fire that began as a gesture of revenge has become a force no one can control. Palaces collapse with thunderous roars, sending fountains of sparks into the air. Roofs cave in with sharp cries of timber giving way. The heat is so intense that stones split apart, shooting fragments like arrows. The soldiers, their drunken euphoria fading, now stumble through the destruction with mixed expressions. Some laugh still, pointing at the ruins as though they are trophies of war. Others are silent, their eyes hollow, their bodies moving sluggishly, as if the weight of what they've done presses heavier than armor. A few argue loudly, swearing the fire was a mistake, that Alexander should have stopped it. But those voices are drowned out by the crackle of flames and the crashing of collapsing beams. You step into what was once a hall lined with reliefs. Last night they had been alive with firelight, the carved figures dancing in the glow. Now they are barely visible, blackened and crumbling. Where kings once strode in eternal stone, there are only scars and jagged edges. You bend to touch the ground and your hand comes away covered in fine grey ash. It clings to your skin like the ghost of the city. Everywhere, the destruction is absolute. The storerooms filled with embroidered cloths are now charred piles of brittle threads. The ivory carvings are nothing but twisted lumps of black. Even bronze fittings warp under the heat, curling like dead leaves. And yet, the most haunting loss is not gold or silver, it is memory. Scrolls, tablets, records painstakingly inscribed for centuries crumble into dust. Names of kings, laws of provinces, the labor of scholars, gone in a single night of drunken rage. The Persians who survived the blaze watch in mute horror. You see them clustered in groups at the edges of the ruins. Some weep openly, their cries rising thin against the roar of fire. Others simply stare, their faces blank, as if their minds cannot grasp what their eyes see. A woman clutches a broken piece of carved stone as though it were her child. An old man sifts through ash with trembling fingers, searching for something, anything that survived. He finds nothing. And yet, even amid despair, there is fury. You catch the sharp glares of Persians hidden in shadows, their hatred burning brighter than the fire itself. They cannot strike back now. The army is too strong, their weapons too sharp, their spirits too broken. but you feel their silent promise. This humiliation will not be forgotten. Persepolis may burn, but the memory of who set the fire will live, whispered in every home, carried to every province still loyal to Darius. You wonder if Alexander has thought of this, that revenge cuts both ways. The fire spreads beyond the palaces into the residential quarters. Houses of nobles, already looted, are now reduced to smouldering rubble. Courtyards once shaded by trees are littered with black stumps. The leaves turn to ash in the hot wind. The stench of burning flesh drifts faintly. You do not look too closely to see whether it is animals or people caught in the inferno. The army, meanwhile, staggers between triumph and regret. Some soldiers, still drunk, sing as they march through the ruins, holding charred fragments of furniture or melted goblets aloft like trophies. Others curse as they realize treasures they might have plundered are gone forever, swallowed by fire. A few try to douse flames with buckets of water, but the effort is futile. The city is too vast, the fire too hungry, the men too few and too tired. You watch Alexander as he surveys the destruction. He stands on a high terrace. The ruins sprawled below him like a battlefield. His cloak is streaked with soot, his hair matted with sweat and ash. He does not speak for a long time. His generals stand beside him, Ptolemy, Hephaestion, others, each shifting uneasily, as if unsure whether to congratulate or condemn. When Alexander finally speaks, his voice is low, almost lost in the wind. Thus Persia pays for Athens. Some nod, some cheer faintly, but you hear no joy in his tone, only weariness. The destruction is not clean. It does not end with a single blaze. For days, embers smoulder in hidden corners. Fires reignite in the night, fed by winds or careless sparks. Soldiers tasked with guarding the ruins instead poke through them for scraps of surviving treasure. Persians creep through at night too, hoping to rescue family heirlooms or sacred objects, but find only ashes. You begin to notice the aftermath on the faces of your comrades. Their eyes are red from smoke. Their throats raw, their bodies sluggish. Some cough constantly, hacking up black phlegm. Others stare blankly, as if haunted by what they have seen. The bravado of the feast has evaporated, replaced by exhaustion and unease. Even the songs at night are quieter now, the laughter forced, the wine tasting sour. And yet the ruin itself exerts a strange fascination. You find yourself wandering back into the charred halls again and again, drawn by something you cannot name. Perhaps it is the eerie silence, broken only by the hiss of dying embers. Perhaps it is the sight of colossal columns, standing alone, amid blackened rubble, monuments of endurance, amid collapse. Perhaps it is guilt, the sense that you must keep looking, because to look away is to deny what you have done. One night, under a smoky moon, you see a group of Persians gathering near the ruins. They kneel on the ground, facing what was once the grand audience hall. They chant in low voices, their words rising like smoke into the air. You do not understand their language, but you feel their meaning. They are not mourning just a city. They are mourning themselves, their empire, their gods. You want to tell them you too feel the loss, that you too are haunted, but you remain silent. You know your presence would only wound them more. The destruction of Persepolis is not swift, not clean, not simple. It is messy, drawn out, lingering. It seeps into every corner of life, every breath you take. The flames may die, but the smoke remains. In the air, in the sky, in your lungs, in your memory. And though Alexander may march eastward soon, though he may chase Darius across deserts and mountains, though he may conquer lands beyond imagining, Persepolis will follow him. The burning will cling to his name, as tightly as any victory. For now you stand amid the ruins, the fire still spreading in small bursts, the soldiers still wandering like shades of their former selves, the Persians still watching with broken eyes. You inhale, and the air tastes of ashes. You exhale, and you feel as if you are breathing out history itself. You wake to a silence that is not silence at all. It is the hush of ruin, the heavy breath of smoke still curling from blackened beams, the faint hiss of embers chewing through what little remains. Persepolis is no longer a city but a carcass, smouldering under the pale morning sun. And at its heart lies the Apadana, the grand audience hall, once the pride of the Achaemenid kings. You make your way through the ruins, your sandals crunching on ash. The air tastes bitter, sharp enough to sting your throat. You remember what this place looked like only days ago. Those colossal staircases carved with endless reliefs of tribute bearers, Persians standing tall as rulers of the known world. You remember how the columns seemed like a forest of stone, their capitals crowned with bulls and lions, as if to say Persia was eternal. Now, as you step closer, you see what eternity looks like when struck by fire. The Apadana is unrecognizable. The roof has collapsed in sections, leaving only jagged fragments leaning against the air like broken ribs. The grand columns, 30 meters high, carved with precision that mocked the ages, stand blackened, their surfaces cracked by heat. Some have toppled, lying shattered across the ground, their fragments scattered like bones across a battlefield. The carved staircases, once alive with detail, are smeared with soot, the faces of kings and envoys melted into shadow. You hear the mutters of soldiers around you. Some curse softly, lamenting the treasure that burned with the hall. Others laugh, pointing at the ruins as though they are trophies of conquest. But for most, there is only silence, the kind that falls when men realize they have done something too large to grasp. You walk up the great staircase, your hand brushing the stone reliefs. Here a delegation of Egyptians once carried gifts for the Persian king. Their carved faces are smeared and cracked. There a group of Indians bore ivory and animals. Now their outlines are blurred, half-eaten by fire. Whole rows of figures are gone, erased by heat in a way no chisel ever could. You feel a pang in your chest, not just for the Persians, but for the artistry itself, for the hands that carved these images 2 centuries ago, believing they would stand forever. Inside the hall, the devastation is even worse. The roof beams, once supported by those colossal columns, are charred husks scattered across the floor. Fragments of cedar and cypress lie in tangled heaps, still smouldering. The floor, once gleaming stone, is cracked and blackened, covered in drifts of ash. You pick up a lump of what was once a painted panel. The colors are gone, the shape unrecognizable. All that remains is dust that crumbles in your fingers. The soldiers wander aimlessly, their steps slow, their eyes darting nervously. You hear whispers. Perhaps it was too much. Perhaps we should have spared it. But none speak loudly enough for Alexander to hear. He enters the hall with a small group of companions, his face grim. He does not speak as he surveys the ruin, only gazes upward at the skeletal remains of columns, his jaw tight. One of his generals breaks the silence. "It is finished," he says, perhaps to reassure himself. Alexander does not answer. He walks slowly across the hall, his boots crunching on shards of stone and charcoal. He pauses at a fallen column, places his hand on the cracked surface, and closes his eyes. You cannot read his thoughts, but you sense they are heavy. Perhaps he imagines how future generations will judge him, not only as a conqueror but as a destroyer. The Persians gather at a distance, watching with eyes full of grief. They do not approach the ruins. They dare not, with Macedonian soldiers still present, but you can see their mourning in their posture, their bowed heads, their whispered prayers. One young man, braver than the rest, dares to step closer, clutching a charred piece of stone. He kneels, pressing his forehead to it. The soldier raises his spear to drive him back, but Alexander signals to let him be. For a moment, conqueror and conquered stand together in silence, both staring at what has been lost. The destruction of the Apadana is not just physical, it is symbolic. This hall was the heart of Persepolis, the place where Persia displayed its power to the world. To see it in ruins is to see the empire itself broken, humbled, humiliated. The soldiers may cheer and claim vengeance for Athens, but deep inside, you feel a hollow ache. The grandeur you saw upon entering Persepolis is gone, replaced by emptiness. You wander deeper into the ruins, and find fragments of inscriptions scattered on the ground. Some are still legible, cuneiform lines etched by order of Darius or Xerxes, proclaiming their glory, their empire, their eternity. You trace the grooves with your fingers, thinking of the pride with which those words were carved. Now the stones lie broken, their eternity cut short. The heat from the fire still lingers in the walls. You touch one and pull your hand back instantly, the stone searing hot even after hours. The smell clings to everything: burnt wood, charred paint, the acrid tang of melted bronze. It is the smell of endings, of something vast reduced to nothing. Alexander finally speaks. His voice is quiet, but it carries. This is the revenge of Greece. Some of the soldiers cheer weakly, though their voices lack conviction. Others remain silent. You feel the weight of his words sink into you. Yes, this was vengeance, but vengeance has a cost. The Greeks have avenged Athens, but they have also erased something irreplaceable. Later that day, the soldiers begin clearing debris, dragging charred beams aside, piling rubble into heaps. Some search for treasure that might have survived the flames: an overlooked cup, a melted ornament, a scrap of silver. Most find only ashes. The Persians creep into the ruins at night, sifting through the rubble with desperate hands, searching for family relics, religious icons, fragments of their past. You see them weeping quietly when they find nothing. And so the Apadana dies not just once but many times. First in fire, then in silence, then in memory. Every step you take across its ruins feels like walking across the grave of an empire. The soldiers may leave, the Persians may rebuild fragments of their lives, but the hall itself will never rise again. You lie awake that night on the outskirts of the city, staring at the glow of smouldering ruins. The stars above seem dim, swallowed by smoke that still rises into the sky. You think of the hands that carved the reliefs, the minds that planned the columns, the voices that once echoed in that hall, all gone, erased in a single night of drunken fire. And you know that whatever else Alexander does, however far he marches, the destruction of the Apadana will follow him. Persepolis is not just conquered, it is undone. The flames may have devoured stone and cedar, but they did not silence voices. As Persepolis collapses into ruin, the cries of its people swell. You hear them echo through courtyards, drift across blackened terraces, rise like smoke into the night sky. The panic of the Persians is raw, unrestrained, unshaped by ritual or pride. It is the sound of a culture gasping for air, as its heart burns before its eyes. You pass through streets lined with figures half hidden in shadow. Families huddled together, their faces smeared with ash, their bodies shaking with exhaustion and grief. Mothers clutch children whose eyes are wide and uncomprehending, whose mouths open in silent fear because their throats are too dry to scream. Old men sit on steps, their heads in their hands, rocking slowly, as if motion itself can shield them from the sight of ruin. Some wander aimlessly through the smoke, dazed, as though the destruction has torn their minds from their bodies. A woman walks past you with an empty water jar still balanced on her head, even though the well she once visited has collapsed into rubble. A boy drags a broken toy, its carved wood scorched through the ashes of his home. He does not cry, his face is stiff, his eyes unfocused, as if childhood itself has burned away. The lament takes many forms. You hear prayers muttered in Old Persian, sharp whispers directed at gods who have suddenly fallen silent. You hear wails that rise and fall in rhythm, songs of grief, older than the empire itself, sung now for its death. And you hear curses spat in your direction, voices cracking with fury. Though their bodies are broken, their hatred is sharp, and you feel it strike deeper than any spear. The nobles suffer their humiliation in quieter ways. You see them led in chains through the ruins, their robes torn, their ornaments stripped away. Once they carried themselves with regal poise. Now they stumble like beggars. Some bow low, hoping to preserve scraps of dignity through submission. Others refuse to lower their heads, their eyes blazing even as soldiers shove them forward. You sense that for these men and women, death would be easier than this shame. One afternoon, you witness a Persian priest, standing before what remains of a temple. His robe is singed, his beard streaked with soot. He raises his arms to the blackened sky and chants, his voice hoarse but steady. Around him, a few survivors kneel, echoing his words. They beg the fire gods to turn their rage aside, They plead with the sky gods to avenge them. They call on the memory of their kings to rise again. Soldiers jeer, throwing stones, but the priest does not falter. His chant carries across the ruins like the heartbeat of a dying city. The grief is not only human. Animals caught in the blaze howl and cry. Horses bolt through streets, their manes aflame, until they collapse in smouldering heaps. Dogs whimper in alleys, too frightened to approach their masters. Even the birds avoid the city now, circling high above, refusing to land where smoke and ash still choke the air. The world itself seems to mourn, and yet the Macedonians are deaf to the lament. They stagger through the ruins with laughter still clinging to their voices, though it rings hollow now. Some mock the Persians, imitating their cries, turning grief into cruel entertainment. Others boast of treasures looted before the fire, shaking bags of coins, or flashing rings torn from Persian fingers. The revelry that began with fire has soured into arrogance. They do not see the pain of the conquered as tragedy. They see it as proof of their own triumph. But you standing between these worlds, you cannot look away. Each face you pass etches itself into your memory, the child asleep in his mother's lap while the house smoulders behind them. The young man staring blankly at a collapsed wall that buried his family. The girl clutching a charred spindle, as if spinning thread might somehow weave her home back together. You begin to realize that conquest is not measured in gold seized or walls toppled. It is measured in these broken lives. The Persians begin to gather in groups, whispering to one another. They share fragments of news rumors that Darius is raising another army in the east, that vengeance will come, that Alexander cannot hold the empire forever. These whispers are frail, but they spread like sparks across the ruins. You feel them pricking at your skin, reminding you that no victory is final. At night, the lament deepens. The ruins glow faintly with embers, casting long shadows across the city. You hear the soft sound of flutes, played not for celebration, but for mourning. The melodies are slow, winding, filled with sorrow. They float through the night air, mingling with the smoke, wrapping around your heart, until you feel the ache of their loss, as if it were your own. One evening, you find yourself sitting near a group of Persians as they mourn. You should not be there. Your presence risks violence, but you cannot pull away. They speak softly, recounting memories of festivals, once held in the Apadana, of kings who stood tall on those staircases, of processions filled with music and light. They tell their children stories of the city's glory, as if to plant in their minds the memory of what was, even as the ruins say otherwise. Their words are heavy with grief, but also with defiance. Persepolis may burn, but in their voices it still lives. The lament of the Persians is not a single cry. It is a symphony of despair, anger, and memory. It seeps into the stones, into the ashes, into your very bones. You realize that while fire can consume wood and gold, it cannot erase the voices of those who mourn. They will carry their grief, and their grief will become resistance. You lie awake, the sound of their wailing echoing in your ears, and you understand something Alexander may not, that the destruction of Persepolis has not ended Persian pride. It has only sharpened it. The empire may be broken, but the people remember. Their lament is not just mourning. It is a promise whispered into the smoke, a vow that this wound will not be forgotten, not in their time, not in yours, not in history itself. The morning after the flames finally die down, a strange stillness settles over Persepolis. No torches, no drunken chants, no triumphant roars, only smoke rising in grey spirals, drifting lazily into a pale sky. The soldiers stir groggily in their camps, nursing throbbing heads and dry mouths. Their laughter from the night before, now replaced by coughing fits and bleary stares. The city around them is no longer a prize to be flaunted. It is a wound, still smoking, impossible to ignore. Alexander himself looks different today. He walks among the ruins with fewer companions, his cloak streaked with soot, his sandals blackened by ash. His face is drawn, his eyes sunken. Gone is the smirk of the reveler, the swagger of the avenger. He moves slower now, his gaze heavy as it sweeps across the devastation. You follow him, and for the first time, You sense something he has not shown before. Regret. He stops before the remains of Xerxes' palace, the very hall where Thais had flung her torch. The walls are hollow shells, the roof a collapsed tangle of charcoal beams. Statues are cracked, their faces melted away, their features lost forever. Alexander stands still, staring at it all, as if searching for the moment when he might have said no. Perhaps he remembers the wine, the laughter, the chants of his soldiers urging him on. Perhaps he recalls the firelight in Thais's eyes when she called for vengeance. Perhaps he wonders if he was king that night, or if he was just another drunk among many, swept away by the frenzy he could not master. He does not speak at first, but his silence speaks enough. His generals shift uneasily behind him. Ptolemy clears his throat, as though ready to defend the act. "It was justice, my king," he says. "For Athens, for Greece," but the words hang in the air like smoke, unconvincing even to himself. Alexander finally replies, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Justice does not taste like ash. You hear the bitterness in it, sharp as vinegar." He turns away, his expression guarded, but you know he feels the weight. The destruction has carved itself into him as deeply as any wound. Throughout the day he moves from ruin to ruin, saying little, touching broken stones with his hands. Once he bends to pick up a fragment of relief, half a carved figure, its face missing. He holds it for a long moment, then lets it crumble to dust in his fingers. You wonder if he sees in it the fragility of empires, Persia's and perhaps even his own. The soldiers, too, sense his mood. Their laughter fades, replaced by nervous murmurs. Some grumble that the fire destroyed too much treasure they might have plundered. Others whisper that perhaps they have gone too far, that the gods will curse them for burning a city built by men who honored divinity in every column and carving. A few defend the act still, but their voices are quieter now, drowned by the silence of their surroundings. The Persians, meanwhile, gather more boldly in the ruins. They sift through ash, searching for scraps of their past. Some kneel before broken statues, pressing their foreheads to the stone, whispering prayers for forgiveness. Others stand tall, glaring at the Macedonians with eyes that promise vengeance, though their bodies remain powerless. Their grief is no longer just mourning, it is accusation. You feel it each time their gaze meets yours, as if you yourself had carried the torch. That night, Alexander calls his companions to a private council. You are close enough to overhear fragments of their debate. Some insist the burning was necessary, a message to Persia that its glory is gone forever. Others warn that it was folly, that it will fuel hatred and rebellion, that it will tarnish Alexander's name. Alexander listens, his face unreadable. At last, he says, "What is done cannot be undone, but it will be remembered, and so must we choose what it means." His words linger in your mind, long after the council disperses. He is right. What is done cannot be undone. Persepolis will not rise again, but its burning will live on. A story retold by Persians and Greeks alike, a fire that spreads across centuries, and Alexander knows it. He must carry it with him, as surely as he carries his sword. In the days that follow, you see him withdraw from the revelry. He no longer joins the soldiers in their drinking, no longer smiles at their crude jokes about Persian sorrow. Instead, he spends hours alone, walking the terraces, staring eastward, toward the mountains. You sense his mind already turning away from Persepolis, toward Darius, toward conquest yet unfinished. Perhaps it is easier for him to march forward than to dwell on the ashes behind him. Yet, the regret surfaces in small ways. When a soldier boasts loudly of setting fire to a hall, Alexander silences him with a glare. When Thais, still proud of her role, laughs about the night, Alexander cuts her off with a curt wave of his hand. He does not banish her, he is not cruel, but the warmth between them has cooled. She glows with triumph, but he smoulders with unease. Their torches may have burned together, but their memories of that night will never align. For you, the regret is heavier. Each time you close your eyes, you see flames leaping across cedar beams, hear the crack of collapsing roofs, smell the acrid stench of smoke. You dream of carved faces melting into nothing, of Persians wailing in the streets, of Alexander's silhouette against the fire. You wake with your heart pounding, your lungs aching, as though you have swallowed smoke all over again. One evening you overhear a Persian elder speaking softly to a group of children. He tells them the story of the fire not as defeat, but as endurance. They can burn our city, he says, but they cannot burn our blood. We are Persia still, even in ashes. His voice is steady, his eyes burning brighter than the ruins. You realize then that Alexander's regret is not just personal, it is political. He may have destroyed Persepolis, but he has not destroyed Persia. The people will carry their pride long after the smoke fades. And so, the regret lingers. Alexander cannot undo what has been done. The soldiers cannot drink away the memory. You cannot scrub the soot from your soul. The city stands in ruins, a monument not only to conquest but to folly. As you stand on a terrace, overlooking the blackened remains, you feel the weight of it pressing into you. History is not just the glory of victories or the wealth of treasure. It is also the scars of mistakes, and you, like Alexander, will carry this scar forever. The smouldering ruins of Persepolis still hiss and smoke, but already the story of its destruction begins to stretch beyond the stones. Soldiers gossip about it by the campfires, adding details and exaggerations, turning the drunken fire into a legend. Persians whisper of it in corners, shaping it into a wound they promise to avenge. And in Alexander's mind, though he does not say it aloud, you can tell he knows the truth. This act is more than a night of vengeance. It is a political symbol, one that will define how the world sees him and how Persia remembers him. The comparison is immediate. Men murmur the name Xerxes as if he himself stands among the ruins. Almost 150 years earlier, Xerxes marched into Greece, torched Athens, and left the Parthenon a charred husk. Greeks have sung of that night ever since, passing the story like an heirloom of rage. It was that insult which Alexander claimed to answer here, that ancient fire which he believed justified the new one. For Athens, the soldiers had cried, and Alexander had let their voices carry his hand. But now, with the smoke curling into the pale blue sky, you hear a different murmur. Was it vengeance or vanity? Some Greek officers puff out their chests with pride, declaring that the burning of Persepolis has wiped away generations of humiliation. We have answered Xerxes, one boasts, holding a melted coin like a trophy. The gods themselves must smile, others are less certain. Athens burned because of war. You overhear a veteran mutter, but Persepolis burned because of wine. He spits in the dust, shaking his head. That is not justice. That is folly. The Persians, of course, see only blasphemy. To them, Persepolis was not just stone. It was sacred space, a link between their kings and the divine, a stage on which their empire displayed harmony. To burn it is to mock their gods, to trample their ancestors. They do not speak of Xerxes' campaign in Greece, because to them that is irrelevant. What they see is their heart ripped out by foreigners who danced in the fire. And so, the burning of Persepolis becomes a mirror. To Greeks, it is triumph. To Persians, it is desecration. To Alexander, it is a gamble, a symbol he must control before it controls him. You watch him carefully in the days that follow. He no longer struts through the ruins with torches raised. He walks in silence, chin lowered, cloak trailing in the ash. But when he speaks to his generals, he frames the destruction as deliberate, calculated. This is justice, he says to them, a message to all who defy us, that the crimes of the past will not go unanswered. His tone is firm, his gaze steady, and yet you cannot forget the regret you saw in his eyes on that first morning. Perhaps he is speaking more to himself than to them. The army, however, is quick to seize the symbol. They carve graffiti into the surviving walls, crude drawings of burning temples, of soldiers holding torches aloft. They sing songs comparing Alexander to the heroes of old, to Achilles and Agamemnon, avengers of Greece. The destruction of Persepolis becomes a badge of honor. They wear proudly, proof that their campaign is more than conquest. It is destiny. But you also hear the Persian version forming, whispered in hushed tones among survivors. They fear us still, one man mutters. Why else destroy what they could not rule? Another swears the spirits of the kings will curse Alexander, that his victories will crumble as quickly as their city. The Persians shape the burning into a story of martyrdom. Persepolis as a phoenix, its ashes proof that Persia endures even when broken. You realize both sides are right in their own way. The fire is no longer just fire. It is a language, and both Greeks and Persians speak it differently. Alexander knows symbols matter. He spends more time now in Persian robes, more time adopting their customs. He begins to speak of himself as the heir of Cyrus and Darius, not just as a conqueror but as their successor. You see the contradiction. He burned their sacred city, yet he seeks to claim their crown. Will the Persians accept such a man, or will they forever see him as the arsonist who danced in their ruins? That question lingers in every bowed head, every narrowed eye. One afternoon, Alexander addresses the army from a high terrace overlooking the ruins. His voice carries across the silent crowd. Persepolis is gone, but its lesson remains. Greece does not forget. Those who raise fire against us will see fire returned. The soldiers roar approval, raising their spears, their voices echoing against the scorched stone. Yet when the cheer fades, you notice the Persians nearby, their faces set, their lips pressed tight. They do not cheer, they do not forget either. As days pass, you begin to see the larger pattern. The burning of Persepolis is not just an ending, it is a beginning. It reshapes the war, reshapes how both sides think of themselves. The Greeks march with new swagger, believing they have avenged their ancestors. The Persians grieve with new resolve, believing they have been dishonored in ways no future can excuse. The fire has created a wound that will bleed for generations. And you walking among the ruins, inhaling the smoke that never seems to fade. You understand something Alexander himself may not yet admit. He has won a victory, yes, but he has also chained himself to the fire. Wherever he marches, east or west, north or south, the world will remember him not only as the conqueror of Persia, but as the man who burned Persepolis. His revenge may have been swift, but its shadow will be long. You stand one evening on the blackened steps of the Apadana, staring at the horizon. The sky glows faintly, the last embers of the city still smouldering. You imagine how the story will be told. 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. Will they call it justice, folly, triumph, desecration, perhaps all at once? You realize the truth. Fire does not only consume wood and stone, it consumes certainty. What remains is smoke, drifting, shifting, impossible to hold. And in that smoke, Persepolis becomes not just a city, but a symbol of vengeance, a symbol of loss, a symbol of how easily glory can turn to ash. Alexander may move on, his army may march east, but the world will carry this night forever. The ruins are quiet now, yet their silence is heavier than the roar of the fire. You walk across blackened stones where libraries once stood, where shelves of clay tablets and rolls of parchment lined the walls. The palaces are ash, the treasuries gutted, but what gnaws at you most is what you cannot see. The knowledge, the words, the memory of centuries all gone in a single night of drunken fire. You pause at what remains of an archive chamber. The walls are cracked, smoke-stained, charcoal beams lie collapsed in heaps. Beneath them, fragments of clay tablets crunch under your feet. You bend down and lift one. Its surface blackened, the wedge-shaped marks half melted into unreadable scars. These were no ordinary scratches. They were contracts, decrees, records of trade, stories of kings, hymns to gods. Now they are nothing but brittle shards, crumbling in your palm. Imagine what Persepolis held. Accounts of taxes from every satrapy, inventories of tribute flowing in from India, Babylon, Egypt, Greece itself. Letters from governors, pleading for troops, petitions from villages begging for relief, lists of supplies feeding armies that stretched across continents, records of artisans, workers, laborers, proof that empire is not only battles but also sweat and labor, carefully tallied on clay, all of it, burned. And beyond accounts there were stories. Histories of kings, tales of gods, genealogies of dynasties, myths etched in fragile ink, songs recorded so they might outlast the singers, perhaps even secrets of Persia's rituals, its laws, its philosophies gone. Fire spares nothing, not gold, nor parchment, nor clay. What the sword could not erase, the flames have devoured. You try to picture it. Scholars hunched over desks, dipping reeds into ink, pressing styluses into wet clay. They worked in silence, their fingers shaping memory into permanence. They believed their words would endure centuries, that kings yet unborn would read their records. They could not imagine that soldiers, drunk and laughing, would one night toss torches through their windows. The thought makes you sick. You have not only killed a city, you have murdered memory itself. The soldiers do not see it this way. To them, clay tablets are useless weights. You see one man kick a fragment aside, laughing, as though it were no different than rubble. Another mocks the strange symbols etched on the shards, imitating their shapes with drunken scratches in the dust. To the conquerors, what matters is gold, silver, jewels. Words are not worth carrying when treasure already weighs their wagons. But you, walking among the ashes, you feel the loss deeper than any missing goblet. The Persians know. You see them creeping into the ruins at night, sifting through the rubble with desperate hands. They lift fragments of clay to their lips, murmuring prayers over broken inscriptions. A young boy clutches a half-burned scroll, its writing smeared into blackness, and weeps as though holding a corpse. A woman gathers fragments in her robe as if they were gems, pressing them to her chest. They understand what has been lost, even if they cannot restore it. You remember the carvings on the staircases, the endless rows of tribute-bearers from across the empire. They told a story in stone, that Persia gathered the world under one crown, that all nations walked in procession to honor its kings. Those carvings still exist, though charred and cracked, but their meaning has shifted. No longer symbols of pride, they are symbols of what has been erased. The empire they celebrated has burned along with its libraries. What knowledge did you destroy without knowing? Did those scrolls hold cures for illness, secrets of astronomy, wisdom of governance? Did they contain poetry that could have outlived empires, words that might have guided generations? You will never know. The fire has written its own story across them, and it is a story of silence. Alexander himself seems to sense it. One afternoon, you see him standing amid the rubble of an archive, staring at the shards scattered across the ground. He bends, lifts a fragment, studies the melted lines. His brow furrows. He says nothing, but you can see the realization flicker in his eyes. This is not treasure that can be replaced. This is something lost forever. His generals do not care. Words do not feed armies, one sneers, kicking the fragment from Alexander's hand. Gold does. Alexander says nothing in reply, but his gaze lingers on the ashes. You wonder if he feels the same guilt that weighs on you, or if he simply calculates how history will tell the story. Whether anyone will care for the loss of tablets when the glory of conquest shines brighter. But history will care. You know it. The burning of Persepolis will not only be remembered for the destruction of palaces or the humiliation of Persians. It will be remembered as the night when knowledge itself was consumed. When centuries of memory turn to smoke, you are not just conquerors, you are erasers. At night, the thought keeps you awake. You dream of voices crying out from the flames. Voices of scribes, poets, priests. They call your name, accuse you, demand to know why their words were not worth saving. You wake with a start, sweat clinging to your skin, the smell of smoke still in your lungs. You want to answer them, to tell them you had no choice, that the fire was already raging, that deep inside, you know the truth. You could have stopped it. All of you could have stopped it. Instead, you cheer. The Persians begin to adapt their grief into ritual. You see them gathering in small circles, chanting softly over the ruins. They recite from memory the words that once lived on tablets, teaching their children so the knowledge will not die completely. It is not enough. Not all can be remembered. But it is something, in their voices, you hear defiance. The fire has taken their libraries, but it has not taken their will to preserve what they can. One evening, you stumble upon a Persian youth, scratching words into the dirt with a stick. He looks up, startled, expecting punishment. You crouch beside him, and watch as he writes line after line in cuneiform, his hand steady despite the fear in his eyes. "So it will not be lost," he whispers. You say nothing, but you feel a lump in your throat. This boy, with nothing but dirt and a stick, carries more strength than all the torches that burned his city. The loss of cultural knowledge, is invisible to most of your comrades, but not to you. You carry it with you like a stone in your chest. Each step across the ruins feels heavier. Each breath of smoke tastes like guilt. You realize that when the army marches east, chasing Darius into the mountains, the ashes of Persepolis will march with you. They will cling to your clothes, seep into your lungs, follow you in your dream. The Persians will never forgive this. Perhaps they will bow now, perhaps they will serve out of fear, but in their hearts, the fire burns still, not the fire that consumed palaces, but the fire of memory. They will remember the night their knowledge was stolen, their voices silenced, their pride erased, and they will tell their children, and their children will tell theirs, until your name and Alexander's are forever tied, not to conquest alone, but to destruction. You look around one last time before leaving the archive ruins. The stones are blackened, the air still smells of ash, and fragments crunch beneath your feet. You bend to pick one up, a tiny shard with a few unburned lines still visible. You cannot read them, but you know they once meant something. You slip it into your pouch, not as loot, not as treasure, but as a reminder. Perhaps someday someone will study it. Perhaps it will whisper a fragment of the voice that fire tried to silence. Persepolis is gone. Its knowledge too. But memory, fragile and human, refuses to die. You walk away, the shard heavy in your pocket, the silence of burned libraries heavy in your soul. The fire has burned itself out. But Persepolis does not feel alive. You walk its streets and hear only echoes, the hollow silence of places once filled with voices, the whistle of wind through blackened columns, the crunch of ash beneath your sandals. It is no longer a city. It is a graveyard. The people who remain live among ruins, their lives reshaped by loss, their shadows stretched long against the charred stones. Survivors cling to what little is left. You see them moving quietly through the ruins, gathering fragments of pottery, scraps of clothing, half-burned tools. They rebuild, not homes but shelters, makeshift huts, propped up with broken beams, tents, stitched from scorched fabric. Smoke still rises from the rubble in thin grey streams, and children cough constantly, their small lungs raw from weeks of inhaling ash. Their eyes look older than their years, wide and hollow, as if childhood itself has been burned away with the city. The Persians who once lived as nobles are no different now from beggars. Robes once embroidered with gold thread are streaked with soot. Their jeweled belts are gone, stripped by Macedonian soldiers. They stand in lines to receive scraps of grain, no longer masters of estates, but mouths waiting to be fed. Some still carry themselves with pride, their spines straight, their eyes cold, but you can see the tremble in their hands. Others have collapsed entirely, sitting in the dust with blank stares, as if their souls burned out along with their homes. For the Macedonians, the city is little more than a camp now. Tents sprout in courtyards, cooking fires crackle where priests once performed rituals. Soldiers swagger through the ruins, still drunk on victory, but the mood has shifted. The wild revelry has faded, replaced by a restless boredom. Men argue over dice games, boast about loot, grumble about smoke and coughs. Some speak of marching east after Darius, eager for more conquest. Others complain that Persia has already given enough, that their bellies are full and their purses heavy, and that chasing kings into deserts holds no appeal. Alexander himself remains an enigma. He spends hours alone in the ruins, sometimes pacing terraces, sometimes seated in silence on a fragment of throne. You hear rumors among the soldiers that he regrets the burning, that he mourns the loss of the city, that he sees ghosts of Persian kings in the smoke. Others whisper that he feels nothing at all, that he has already turned his eyes eastward, toward battles yet to come, leaving Persepolis behind like a snake's shed skin. But even if Alexander tries to leave Persepolis in the past, its ruins cling to him. Persians approach him with petitions begging for mercy, for grain, for protection. Some kneel and pledge loyalty, their words bitter but necessary. Others glare silently, their hatred unmasked. Alexander listens, sometimes granting aid, sometimes dismissing them coldly. He is both conqueror and king, both destroyer and ruler. The contradiction hangs in the air like smoke. impossible to resolve. At night, you hear whispers among the Persian survivors. They speak of Darius, of how he still lives, how he still gathers men in the east. He will return, they say. He will punish them for this. They cling to the hope of revenge, as tightly as they cling to life. You wonder if they believe it truly, or if it is merely a way to keep breathing in a city where hope has turned to ash. For the soldiers, the aftermath carries its own discontent. Some complain that the fire robbed them of riches. Better to plunder than to burn, one mutters, staring at a pile of melted silver. Others fear the god's anger. We've destroyed too much, another says, spitting into the dust. The Persians built this for their kings, for their gods. Do you think they'll forgive us? His words are laughed off, but unease flickers in the eyes of those who hear him. The ruins themselves seem to echo those fears. You walk past the Hall of 100 Columns, now a skeletal frame, and hear the wind whistling through the gaps like a lament. You step into what was once a temple, its roof gone, its altar buried in rubble, and feel the weight of silence pressing against your ears. You climb the great staircases, now cracked and charred, and see the reliefs staring back at you, their faces blackened, their bodies scarred. They look like witnesses, carved in stone, refusing to forget. And you begin to wonder, who are the true survivors here? The Persians who cling to scraps of life, the soldiers who feast among ruins, or the stones themselves, scarred but still standing, silently recording everything your voices will forget. One afternoon, you encounter a Persian woman in the ruins. She kneels beside a blackened wall, her hands brushing soot from a faint inscription. Her face is streaked with ash and tears, but her movements are steady. She whispers words you cannot understand, then turns and looks directly at you. Her eyes are not pleading, not broken. They are fierce. "We remember," she says in halting Greek. Her voice shakes, but her meaning is clear. You feel her words like a spear in your chest. In that moment, you realize that the aftermath of the ruins is not simply suffering, it is memory being forged. Every scar, every cough, every whispered curse will pass forward. The Persians will not forget Persepolis. The Greeks will not forget the fire, and Alexander's name will forever carry the weight of both. The empire itself shifts in the shadow of the ruins. News of the burning spreads quickly. In far-off satrapies, Persians hear that their sacred city is gone. Some bow their heads in fear, deciding resistance is futile. Others clench their fists, swearing revenge. The burning divides them as much as it unites them. For Alexander, it is both victory and danger, proof of his power, but also a spark that could ignite rebellion. As you walk through Persepolis, one last time before the army prepares to march east, you see survivors building small fires in the courtyards. Not fires of destruction, but fires of cooking, of warmth, of life. Children play with sticks, drawing lines in the ash. Old men sit together, muttering stories of kings long gone. Women sweep rubble from their doorways, as if cleaning could restore what is lost. The city is broken, but life clings stubbornly, like weeds pushing through stone. You stand on a terrace, looking down at the ruins, and feel the weight of it all. The fire was one night. The aftermath is forever. The soldiers will move on. Alexander will chase Darius. The war will continue, but Persepolis will remain here, silent, scarred, smoking, a reminder of what conquest costs, a wound carved into history. And you know this. Though the city lies in ruins, it has not been silenced. The Persians will live among the ashes. They will whisper their grief, their fury, their memories. They will raise children who remember. They will carry Persepolis forward, not as stone, not as palaces, but as fire in their hearts. The ruins of Persepolis still glow faintly in the night, embers pulsing like the heartbeat of something too proud to die completely. You walk among them one last time, the ash swirling around your feet, the columns looming like charred giants. The city is no longer the radiant capital you first entered. It is a shadow, a scar, and yet, in this ruin, you sense something strange, something larger than the stones themselves. You sense legacy being written. For Alexander, the burning has already become myth. Around campfires, his men retell the story with pride, how their king avenged Greece, how they burned the palace of Xerxes, how the gods themselves must have cheered as the flames consumed the city. Each telling grows larger, bolder, bloodier. Thais is painted as a goddess of vengeance, Alexander as a hero of fire. The drunken haze of that night is forgotten, only the blaze remains. But among the Persians, the story is told differently. They whisper of arrogance, of sacrilege, of a foreign king who could conquer but not rule. They call him not Alexander the Great, but Alexander the Burner, Alexander the Destroyer. In their eyes, the fire is not justice, but humiliation. Their voices are quieter than the Macedonians' songs, but they are sharper, and they will last longer. You realize that history is already splitting in two, each side carving its own version of truth from the same smoke. The ruins themselves enforce this divide. For the Greeks, they are trophies, proof of vengeance, proof that Persia's glory is nothing but ash. For the Persians, they are altars of grief, places to mourn not only their city but their pride, their ancestors, their gods. The charred columns stand as witnesses, impartial and unmoved, recording silently what words will twist. Alexander knows he has bound himself to this act. When he sits with his generals, he frames the burning as a deliberate decision, a calculated symbol. The world will know, he says, that Greece remembers, that Persia pays for its crimes. His tone is steady, but you have walked with him long enough to see the cracks. In his solitude, you catch him staring at the ruins with eyes that betray unease. He has destroyed more than a city, he has destroyed a crown he hoped to wear. He can claim Persia's lands, but how can he claim its spirit when he has burned its heart? And yet he must march on. Eastward lies Darius, still fleeing, still breathing, still a thorn in his pride. The army prepares to follow, their wagons loaded with treasure, their bellies full of smoke and ash. Persepolis becomes not a capital, but a stepping stone, a ruin left behind, as the tide of conquest rolls forward. But it is a ruin that will follow Alexander wherever he goes, etched into his name more deeply than any battle. You walk through the ruins one last time before departure. Survivors still move quietly among the rubble. A woman kneels beside a blackened wall, humming a lullaby to a child who will never know the city's glory. A man sits before a broken column, sharpening a knife, not for war but for memory, the steel whispering against the stone. Children play with shards of pottery, their laughter thin but defiant. Life persists, even in ash. And you realize that this is the true legacy of the burning. Not only what was destroyed, but what survives. The Persians will carry this night with them, in their grief, in their songs, in their fury. The Greeks will carry it too, in their boasts, in their stories, in their pride. And you will carry it in your lungs, in the taste of smoke that will never quite leave, in the dreams where flames crawl across cedar beams, in the silence that follows. History will never agree on Persepolis. Was it justice for Athens? Was it drunken folly? Was it vengeance or vanity or both at once? To the Persians it will always be loss. To the Greeks it will always be triumph. To Alexander it will always be both crown and chain. But to you, who walked its streets, who felt the fire on your skin, who heard the wails of its people, it will always be a scar. The city lies behind you now, a silhouette of broken stone against the horizon. The army marches east, chasing the shadow of Darius, carrying wagons of treasure and hearts, still restless for conquest. But no matter how far you go, you know Persepolis will march with you. Its smoke has entered your blood. Its fire has written itself into your bones. Its legacy will not let you go. And so, as you leave the city behind, you whisper a farewell, not to Alexander, not to the army, but to Persepolis itself, to its carved staircases, its towering columns, its reliefs of nations gathered in harmony, to its libraries, its palaces, its temples, its people. You whisper a farewell to what once was, and to what will never be again. Because in truth, Persepolis does not die tonight. It will live forever, in memory, in legend, in debate, in regret. It will live in the songs of Persians, in the boasts of Greeks, in the chronicles of historians, in the whispers of ruins, It will live as fire lives, burning, consuming, reshaping, never still. And so the story of Persepolis ends, not with silence but with legacy. The city burns, the world remembers, and you, whether you wish it or not, are part of its flame. The embers fade, the smoke drifts upward, and the ruins settle into quiet. Imagine yourself standing there, far from the roar of armies, alone in the soft hush that follows fire. The stones are warm beneath your hand, but the flames are gone. The air is gentler now, carrying only the faint scent of ash, the faint memory of what was. You take a slow breath. The chaos, the shouting, the clash of vengeance, all of it is behind you. What remains is stillness. The ruins do not demand anything of you. They simply are, resting beneath the stars, heavy with memory, but calm in their silence. You let your shoulders ease, your body soften. The night is no longer filled with fire, but with quiet. The people of Persepolis may mourn, the soldiers may boast, Alexander may regret, but you here, now, you are safe. You are only a witness, drifting through history like a shadow. The flames cannot touch you. The anger cannot find you. You are simply breathing slowly, deeply, letting the past become distance. The stars above are clear again. Their light falls gently across the ruins, silver and soft. The fire is gone. Only the sky remains. And in that sky, you feel no vengeance, no grief, only calm. The night accepts you, holds you, soothes you. Let the memory of fire fade into embers. Let the silence wash over you. You are safe. You are resting. You are drifting into sleep. Good night. Sweet dreams.